My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Happy Halloween week, everybody. I cannot believe it is the end of October already. And look, I got my cinnamon broom right here on my windowsill for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Trader Joe's has like the most incredible cinnamon brooms, mini ones and large ones like these. Wonder if I can grab it. Wait, let's see. Here is my cinnamon broom. And it smells so good. Oh my gosh, it smells delicious. Thank you, Trader Joe's. If only Trader Joe's could sponsor cinnamon brooms for Third Eyesight podcast, but alas, I'm not at that level yet. But I hope everyone's enjoying their spooky season and their month of October. And I just realized that in 2 months, it is Christmas, which is insane. And if you know me very well, you know I love Christmas. But anyways, let's focus on spooky season and this Halloween week. I wanted to focus in this episode on the spookiest experiences I've ever had with ghosts. And some of these experiences, I have four experiences to share with you in this episode. Some of them will have to do with me actually experiencing a ghost. One has more to do with just the vibe of a place. And then the fourth one is a very personal experience I had with someone on the other side who is a family member of mine. So let's start with the spookiest, and some of you may have heard these stories already, but this is gonna be like a best of episode. But I'm going to share some other ideas I have about these places. The first up is Fort Delaware. It is in, I believe, Delaware City, just off of Delaware City in the state of Delaware, and it is an island in the middle of a river. And you have to take a ferry from Delaware City to the fort. And this is if I remember correctly, a Civil War era fort. And they do night tours during the month of October. And if you are in the area, in the region, I highly recommend you do these paranormal investigation tours in 2025. My experience there, it is a very heavily charged place. And the first thing that happened to me that night, I was with my family. My family's sort of into these things too. And I entered a room and felt very dizzy. And then a minute later, the tour guide starts to talk about what is Sella doing? My little doggy is munching on something here, and I'll find out later. I'm gonna have to investigate. Anyways, I digress. The tour guide starts to say that this was the infirmary, and people often, they'll feel sick when they come in here. They'll see this kind of ghost. I'm like, oh, this makes sense why I got dizzy when I stepped in here. So it's interesting how immediately my body responded to being in this space that used to house sick people, sick soldiers, and maybe soldiers who were on their deathbed. And in the same location, not the same room, but in the kitchen, they had this spirit. They have this spirit of a woman who used to cook for the soldiers, and she would be very particular that she did not want men in her kitchen. And so they'd say, if you're a man, you might experience something. You might experience discomfort or like you don't belong there. So we were there. We were there with dowsing rods. And I've shared on this podcast before what dowsing rods are, how they're used. And they told us we can use dowsing rods to communicate with the other side. Now, I had never used dowsing rods that way. I had never held dowsing rods, I think, in my life before. And my brother was the first person to use them out of all of us. And those things were responding to his questions with yes and no, like open the rods up for yes, close them for no. And I tried them, and they were doing exactly that. And it was just incredible. And there was a point at which one of my family members started feeling sick, a male family member, and he asked to leave. And it was when he walked into the pantry closet that she would have used. And that pantry closet, I did step in there, and it just felt off. Now, something I always say on these podcasts about paranormal investigations is sometimes the frame of mind that we go into an investigation with can dictate what our experience is going to be like. So I'm being told, as a man, I may not be welcomed there by the spirit. So maybe my head's already preparing for feeling certain ways or feeling uncomfortable. So when I step into a part of that space and I get dizzy or uncomfortable, maybe it's what is it called? Is it psychosomatic? Like when you think yourself into an experience, even though it may not be actually happening to you. That's possible. But beyond just the feeling dizzy or feeling uncomfortable, I could just feel the thickness of the energy. It's off, and not in a bad way, because those souls have the right to be there if they want to be. It just feels different than just a regular non-haunted space. So Fort Delaware is definitely one of my top places I've been to for a paranormal investigation. And it's creepy because it is a dark fort. And there was one moment when somebody who was also on the tour, they split us up into groups. And when all the groups came back together, someone said that they saw the figure of a man like peeking out from behind one of the large weapons. Like I think it was a cannon. A shadow of a guy. And it just tells you how often people see and experience things there, that in one night this all happened. The things I experienced, my family experienced, this other person saw an entity. It's pretty incredible. And something that investigators, very honest investigators, will tell you is it's not often that things just happen during a ghost tour or paranormal investigation. It's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of talking, a lot of asking questions and seeing what happens. And I've had paranormal investigators tell me, both in a tour and one-on-one, that sometimes nothing happens. And often the things you see in the ghost hunting shows, which last an hour per episode, maybe 30 minutes, those are recorded over the course of a few days. So it's not like they're getting all those things. It feels like they're getting all of these things immediately, but they're cutting out all the moments where they're just waiting and when there's silence. So that was Fort Delaware. Number 2, and I've talked about this one a lot, Gettysburg, the Farnsworth House Inn. I will never forget being touched by a ghost. It was honestly, it was a beautiful experience. It was spooky, but it was beautiful, and it felt safe. We were in the dining room of the Farnsworth House Inn, and there were no guests in the dining room because it is a functioning hotel, a small hotel, and the dining room had been closed. So it was after hours, and our tour guide brought us there to use some equipment, and we're using, I forget what it's called, but it's the equipment where you have a camera, and the camera visually maps bodies and entities. So I would be represented on the camera like I look like a stick figure. It creates a stick figure out of my body figure to show that there is something there, that Juan is there in front of the camera. So if something shows up and there's no human being in front of the camera, it's likely to be a spirit. And so a lot of them, 2 or 3 of them, were popping up on that camera. And at the moment we are talking to the souls, I felt like this light brushing against the back of my left arm. I can still think it was my left arm. It was the back of my arm. The back of my arm. I don't know what I'm trying to get more specific, and I can't. But it was so light, and I couldn't. I told the group something just touched me, and I couldn't describe what it felt like. I just couldn't describe it. And the tour guide said, did it feel like a spider web? And it was like a light bulb went on. Like, oh my God, yes, it felt like exactly like that. So when you feel spider web, it's like a tickle. The worst thing is when a spider web hits your face. That's like really tickly and uncomfortable. But imagine like a spider web, like the wind pushes a part of a spider web up against your arm. That's what it felt like. And there are no, like, I wasn't standing next to a wall where there would have been a spider web. Maybe there could have been a spider web above my head that dropped. It's possible, but it's just, I would consider it unlikely. And it was very gentle. It was beautiful. It was actually really beautiful. And I'll never forget that ever. And the fact that it's almost like subconsciously, I think I knew it felt like a spider web, but I couldn't put it to words because I just couldn't describe it until she said it. And I thought, yep, that's exactly what it felt like. And now we're maybe an hour later, 45 minutes later, below the dining room in the cellar. And we are talking out loud. Can you do this? Can you do that? And we hear footsteps walking above our heads in the dining room where we just were, which is supposedly locked, and there's no one in there. These heavy, heavy boot footsteps. And I was starting to think there was something being staged because this is too good. Hearing boot footsteps above our head, to be honest, I'll be very honest with you. To this day, I even still wonder if it was staged because it was just like, this is too perfect. Like, this is way too perfect. But it's what happened next that really has me dumbfounded. We heard a huge, huge bang on the top of our heads, on the ceiling above our heads in that dining room. Huge bang. So much so that I stood up because we were all sitting down. I shot up and I went, shit! And there was this young woman there. It looked like she had just started college or was in high school. And I felt bad for cursing in front of her. I said, I'm so sorry I cursed. It freaked the hell out of me. It was a scary, loud sound. Even the tour guide looked very shaken up. And unless she is an Oscar-winning actress, I know she wasn't faking it because she looked nervous. And she's been doing tours there for 15, 20 years, okay? She looked concerned and nervous. And she did not have the keys to the upstairs, so she couldn't go up and really check. I believe we did go upstairs and look through the window of the door that leads to the dining room, but we couldn't go into the dining room. And so I went to my hotel that night feeling very nervous and afraid. I even messaged like a psychic friend of mine at that time and asked her to send good energy, good positive energy. I was not deep into, actually, I was not practicing as a psychic medium at all. And I had just started doing practice tarot card readings for people. This was the summer of 2021. So I had not discovered my ability yet. And I didn't realize I can protect myself, So I was scared as hell and slept with the lights on that night in the hotel room. And a week later, I got an email. I don't know if everyone else got an email, but that one of the dining room chairs had been on its side the next morning. They found the chair on its side. Now, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. The staff of a historic property like that will not do anything to destroy that property or to harm the integrity of its structure. So why would a staff member take a chair and slam it down on the wood floor? They would be bonkers to do that to this place where they are stewards. They are stewards of this historic place that is very fragile. That place, I mean, it's a historic building. You can't just throw things around, bang on the floor. You could harm the building. You can destroy, you can damage it, okay? So I know that a ghost threw that chair down, or at least like tipped it over. Maybe it was a heavy chair. I don't know if the chair was thrown over, like flipped over and like with force, or if it just like boop. But it sounded like that chair was pushed over with a lot of force. It was like, and I said this in my podcast on Gettysburg, like a 75-pound dumbbell was just boop, dropped onto the floor of a gym. It was so loud. And so I think it was a ghost. And then that makes me think, well, with the boot walking before, because that boot walking across the floor above our heads, that was happening. That happened maybe 1 to 2 minutes before the chair drop. Okay? So if the chair drop was a ghost, which I really think it was, it had to be, couldn't be a staff member who would do that to the floor of their historic place of employment. Then maybe the boots were a ghost. And I wish I could have gotten it on camera. We were all so stunned that nobody got it on camera. I wish I would have filmed it. I'm so upset that I didn't film it. It was incredible. And it was spooky. Really spooky. Place number 3. This is a place where I did not experience a ghost. I don't remember experiencing a ghost. But the vibes were, the Historic Savannah Theatre in Savannah, Georgia. I had a really great time there. They told us, here's the equipment. This is the history. Here are the ghosts you can talk to. Go and investigate. And we just got like 1 to 2 hours, maybe 1 hour and a half to just go on our own, do what we wanted to do with the devices. And it was amazing. The tour company themselves, I didn't really love the personalities they had. I remember, side note, I don't share my legal last name online with you all. Maybe some of you have found it out. That's fine. But my last name is, it's pretty phonetic, but it is a very unusual, rare Latino from Spain last name. And the guy who was running the tour from the tour company, he had asked someone how to pronounce their name, whatever, cool. And then he said, what's your name? And I said, Juan. And he looked it up on his sign-in sheet, and he said, I'm not even going to try your last name. And I thought that was so rude. Like, I don't take things really personally. I don't get insulted easily when it comes to like my culture or my race. But there are some things you just don't freaking say. And that's just like, you just don't say that. So with that aside, I'm still a little bitter, apparently. With that aside, it was an incredible night. And I don't remember experiencing anything that was earth-shattering, like the things I just described in Fort Delaware and in Gettysburg's Farnsworth House Inn in Pennsylvania. But it was such a vibe in there, and it was very creepy. The theater it's just being in a dark theater, number one, is just creepy. And the creepiest spot in that theater is the dressing room. Holy smokes. I did not see or feel anything. Now, granted, I'm afraid of the dark, like pitch black dark. And that dressing room was pretty pitch black dark. It was kind of terrifying and very uncomfortable to sit in. And I think some folks got some EVPs. Maybe some folks did see things. I didn't experience anything that felt visceral or like right in front of my face. Actually, I might have heard something in the backstage area. I think it was the voice of a small kid. I forgot if it was through an audio device or with my own bare ears. I forget, but I did experience something back there. But so the Historic Savannah Theatre is a vibe, y'all. It's a vibe. And last but not least, I do want to share a personal story that has to do with a family member who passed on. And this is something that felt spooky at the moment, but I learned was not a spooky moment after all. And those of you who know me very well might know the story. So my grandfather passed on a Thursday, and I could not go to or Wednesday maybe. I couldn't go to his funeral because of very severe flight delays and cancellations. And it was down in Florida, and it was during the hurricane and stormy season. I couldn't go down for the funeral. And I was pretty disappointed about that, really disappointed actually. And I had to stay home in New York, and I was doing garbage. I was disposing of my garbage in the basement of my then building, and at the corner of my eye I saw the figure of a grayed out man. Now, my grandfather had just passed, but I knew he was alive and well and around on the other side, but I didn't have the same faith that I do now. Not that my faith is perfect, but I didn't think that things could appear for me or that I can experience those things like I know other people have. So I didn't expect to see what I saw. I saw the figure of a man that was grayed out at the corner of my eye. When I looked up, there was nothing there. It looked very, is ephemeral the right word? Like it looked very shadowy. And this basement was, all the fluorescent lights were on. The lighting was on, and I saw it clearly at the corner of my eye. And I didn't think about him at the moment, but I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And now I think it could possibly have been a younger version of him, showing himself as a younger version. And it felt like he was in this in-between place, like he was going through a review. That's what I was, now that I think about it and reflect on it, I think that's what it was. And then that evening, this is Saturday night, and it's approaching midnight. It is midnight, and I'm showering. I'm sorry, I'm not showering, not yet. But my doorbell rings, and this doorbell, it's like a very, I don't know if analog, no, not analog, like a very manual doorbell. You have to, on the outside of the door, pull a lever to make, mechanical is the word. Pull the lever to mechanically make the bell inside the box on the door ring. So a lever rings the doorbell. It's not it's not digital, rather. It's not digital. It's not a button. You have to pull a lever. And so something rings my doorbell, and I check through the peephole. There's no one there. I open my door. There's nobody there. And I start to get nervous. Like, okay, is some kid messing with me? Call me dramatic. I'm like, some criminal? Like, who's going to hurt me? Like, I don't want to get hurt. I'm like, okay, that's really weird. That's really, really weird. So I take a shower, and I pray to my grandfather. I say, Noni. I call him Noni, even though it's a long story. Noni, I think, is the Italian word for grandma, but it's a very long story. I can go into another day. Noni, if that was you, I'd rather it be you than it be like some kid messing with me or a criminal. I'd rather it be you. So if it's you, can you please do it again? I turn off the shower, open the shower curtain, grab the towel, dry myself. Ring! Thing rings again. But what's interesting, let me pause a moment. The way that the doorbell rings, it's not a full force, like if someone were to, like the pizza man were to ring my doorbell. And because it's mechanical, the force with which you pull the lever dictates how loud the ring is and how much it resonates. So it sounded like something just like lightly tapped it, but enough of a tap to still hear a ring. Does that make sense? So I heard a second time, and same thing. So I dry my ass, not literally my ass. I mean, I dry myself. That sounds kind of crass. I dry myself really quick, and I step out of the shower, and I go to the door, and it's like between the time the doorbell had rung the second time and me going to check in the peephole was maybe like 15 seconds. Nobody there. I open the door, look around, no one there. I'm still nervous. I'm like, okay, I think someone's messing with me because Juan didn't have, oh, ye of little faith. Juan did not have the faith. And so I get nervous. Please don't judge me for this next part. I grab my clothing iron and I take it with me. I stand outside my door because I got really nervous. Like, if someone is trying to hurt me, I'm prepared. I am not. I want to disclaim, I am not a violent person, but I will defend myself. No one showed up. Even one of my neighbors came by and she saw this crazy looking guy in short shorts and a tank top with a clothing iron in his hand. She's like, hi. I'm like, hi, I know it looks weird, but someone kept ringing my doorbell and there's no one showing up. So I'm just standing here. I'm kind of nervous. He goes, oh, it's okay. What's your name? And like, she was like going to look out for me, and it was very sweet. But, couple days passed by and I realized, you know what? I think that was my grandpa. Had to be him. It had to be him. Who else would it be? 3 days after he passed. And so this is your lesson that not everything paranormal that happens is spooky or meant to be spooky. It's okay if we feel spooked. That's a natural human thing when something out of the ordinary like that happens, right? But not all ghosts are scary. All ghosts are souls. Not all souls are ghosts. And I even want to kind of argue that maybe the word ghost is not a word we should be using anymore. But for the sake of ease and understanding and talking about the same things with each other, I think it's best to just use the word ghost and continue using it. But I do believe that all ghosts are just souls, like everyone else is. I think some souls decide to stay because they feel like they don't want to leave something here. But that's a really good example, that story of something that anyone else could probably, they could think it was a ghost, but it's just my grandpa. I know it was my grandpa. Now I know it for sure. Who else would it be? Okay. So just because something like that happens doesn't mean that it's a creepy ghost. It could be it could be a ghost that just wants to say hello to you, not harm you. It could be a relative that wants to say hello and say hi to you. So those are my spooky ghost stories. Some of them not really spooky ghosts, but that is the last episode for Halloween. And I want to end with saying congratulations to Sophia on Instagram for winning the Intuitive Kickstart giveaway for the 3rd anniversary of Third Eyesight. And I am so excited to send you, Sophia, your Intuitive Kickstart kit, and to also give you a mediumship reading later in the next month. Hope you all take care and have a beautiful, beautiful end of your October. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.